ACLU for allowing me to say a few things. You probably saw in the program that I'm not one of the speakers, and I purposely asked them not to put me on there because I know if I told Gerry, she'd want to know what I was going to be talking about. So I'm going to be saying a few things about our lives together and how we met, and I'm hoping that she doesn't throw anything at me, or if I get in the doghouse later on. So let me start. Let's see, how do I start this story? In the fall of 1971, I met a young woman. Now, for some of you that listen to the Democratic convention, you probably heard that line before, but believe me, it really happened to me. And I'm not pulling out Melania, so this really did happen. So again, back to my story. In the fall of 1971, both Gerry and I were attending college at Cal State University Hayward. I was a transfer student from Hartnell, which is in Salinas, and Gerry was a transfer student from Monterey Peninsula College. Two bitter rivals. I remember when I was going to Hartnell, especially during homecoming, a group of NPC folks would come and paint our Black Panther pink. So we were known as the Pink Panthers. So there's never been a whole lot of love lost between Hartnell folks and NBC folks. But I digress a little bit. Getting back to my story, we both were going to Cal State University Hayward, and the first time I met her, we both lived in the only dorm on campus, and that first week of class, I was walking up to class. She was walking back to the dorm, and right beside her was a young man that I had met the day before. As they were walking towards me, the first thing I noticed was that she had this long, black, beautiful hair, and it went all the way down to her waist. The other thing that I noticed about her was that she was wearing overalls. She had a flowered shirt, and she had sandals. So when I first saw her, I thought, oh geez, she's a hippie. And anyway, as we're walking towards each other, the young man who I met before, who happened to be Gerry's boyfriend at the time, introduced us. And we talked a little bit, and we exchanged pleasantries, and that was about it. That first year in the dorm, I didn't see her that much. She was busy doing her thing. I was busy doing my thing. The second year, we coincidentally decided to move to an apartment just down the street from the college. And a lot of our friends also joined us in that apartment. So I got to know her a lot better. One of the first conversations I remember having with her was to talk about our majors. So she asked me one day, what's your major? And I said, I'm studying history. And she said to me, boy, that's pretty boring stuff. Why are you studying history, and what do you think you're going to do with that? And I said to her, well, I was interested in the past, and I think you can learn from the past. And I looked at her, and I could tell she wasn't impressed. So I said, well, I think it's a good preparation for maybe law school. And I could see in the back, I could see her eyes roll, and she was probably thinking, oh, geez, just what the world needs now, another attorney. So I asked her what her major was, and she said she was studying early childhood education. She wanted to be an elementary school teacher. And I said, oh, that's a nice profession. All the while I was thinking in the back of my head, you're going to need to have two jobs in order to survive with an elementary school teaching credential. So we got to know each other a lot better that year that we moved. As I said before, I was a history major, so I was used to writing papers. I would do a lot of research. I would gather all these materials. I would prepare weeks in advance of these papers. I would, do the research, put together outlines. So one day, Gerry comes knocking on my door, and she says to me, can you do me a favor? And I said, sure, what do you want? Or what can I do for you? And she said, I have this paper that I need to write. And I know that you're a history major and you've got a typewriter. And this is back in the day before computers, PCs, and laptops. So I said, sure, I'll help you out. When does this report due? And she says, tomorrow. And I said, tomorrow? Have you done your research? Do you have an outline? Do you have all the stuff? Have you written a first draft? And she said, no, I'm just going to write it tomorrow or tonight. So I was intrigued. I was wondering, how was she going to be able to write this paper in one day? So that day, after class, I went over to her apartment, and there were books and papers strewn all over the place. And she was sitting there, writing, and she would write, a page at a time, and she would give it to me, and I'd type it. All along, I'd be reading it, of course, and to be honest with you, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Of course, I was in an educational, secondary or elementary school major, so it obviously would make sense to me. But I think we stayed up all night, and she finished the paper, she turned it in. 2 days later, she knocks on my door again and says, I can ask you for another favor. And I thought, oh geez, don't tell me you have another paper that's due tomorrow. She says, no, I'm done writing papers, but the professor has already graded the papers. And you can pick it up during this window of time, but I have classes during that time, so can you go pick it up? And I thought, well, this is going to be interesting to see what kind of grade she got after doing it in one night. So I said, sure, I'll go get it. I went to the department secretary, stood in this long line of students getting their papers. I finally got the paper. It was face down so that other people couldn't read it, couldn't see what her grade was. So I walked away from the line. I turned it over, and she didn't just get an A, she got an A++ with excellent written all over it. And I just about died. She just blew everything I knew about how you write a paper. I took it, I took the paper to her and showed it to her, and she smiled, and I think she was kind of surprised. And to this day, I think she really knew that she was going to get an A, and she wanted me to go get it so that I could grovel in my arrogance of being a historian. Let's see. At the end of that second year, luckily for me, she had broken up with her boyfriend, and we started to become close friends. And then closer friends, and then real close friends. So much so that I think it was our third year. For those of you that are counting, that means we were on the 5-year plan of graduating for college. But in any event, the first time I proposed to her was, I think, in 1974. We were seniors. And I hadn't planned for it. I just went over to the house that she was staying in, and we took a walk. And I don't know if it was the hormones or the full moon or just temporary insanity, but I proposed to her, and she looked at me and said, "Are you nuts?" We haven't even graduated college yet. We don't have jobs. I've only known you for a couple of years. Why don't we wait? And, I was a little bit disappointed, but, down deep in my heart, I knew she was right. So fast forward a couple of years later, I didn't go to law school. I ended up being a social worker. I started working for Asian Mental Health, working in the Asian community of Oakland. Gerry graduated, she got her teaching credential, she substitute taught, and then she became an assistant director of a child care center. So we had met all the criteria that she had set. So the second time I proposed to her, she said yes. Last month we celebrated our 39th anniversary. Those 39 years have probably, have been the best years of my life. We've experienced a lot of things together, but the two things I think that we're most proud of are our kids. Amber, who's sitting back there. Amber, stand up. And our son, Brandon. Luckily for me, she was an early childhood education major because as a parent, I was totally lost. Whatever she said I should do, I just followed. And they turned out to be such amazing kids. And I think a lot of that is due to Gerry. And I know that if you asked Amber and Brandon, they would probably say that they have the greatest mother on the face of this earth. So, I wanted to close it by saying a couple of things. And this part I'm going to have to read. About 10 years ago, Gerry became involved in telling the story of her ancestors who first settled in the Monterey Bay area in the 1850s. It was as if a sleeping dragon had been awoken. Her story is not just a Chinese-American story, but an American story of courage, sacrifice, hard work, struggle, perseverance, and ultimately triumph. It's a story of remembering and honoring all of those who came before us to make lives better for them and for their families. She's told this story to, I don't know, probably hundreds of young adults, of seniors, and elementary school students. And I've been at most of her presentations. And inevitably, when she's telling the story, there's one point where she starts crying. And then I start crying. But, she is so dedicated to the story. And I am so very proud of her that I'm proud to say that I'm with her.